At that movie that is part of a franchise and is often overshadowed by its successor, but is just as good. That movie for me is Batman Begins. This movie is not the best written movie, but goes into the origins of the Dark Knight better than any other media before it, and is emblematic of the need to sacrifice one's own desires in order to protect others. I love this movie. I think it's fantastic. Secretly my favorite film in the whole Dark Knight trilogy. Let's discuss it a little bit today. The film begins with Bruce Wayne finding himself and trying to understand the nature of crime and endure through all of its lessons. He is thrown into a Chinese prison after committing a crime and meets Ducard, played by Liam Neeson, who is perfect for the role. He is trained by the League of Shadows and is given the opportunity to become a member, but must kill another man in order to join. He realizes the dangers of such an act, that in order to achieve a utilitarian goal is ludicrous, and one evil act does not justify another supposed righteous act. He sets the place on fire in an act of defiance and ends up saving Ducard from sliding over a cliff, and later leaves him with a villager in order to recover. This may end up hitting him on the backside later, but we'll get to that. After 7 years away from Gotham City, Bruce Wayne returns in order to rid the city of filth and corruption, in the style of a vigilante, whether it is intended that way or not. The scene in the cave where he is surrounded by bats symbolizes his rising above his own fear, in order to become one with his new persona and spread fear to those who would do harm to the innocent. We all must overcome our own fears if we are to succeed in life and forge a greater future for both ourselves and our families. Characters. Bruce Wayne, played by Christian Bale, gives a dynamic performance as Bruce Wayne and does a great job of emoting what any young person may feel after losing their parents at such a young age, and how we must overcome our own grief. Overcoming his own cowardice and not being able to kill Joe, and realizing what a cowardly act that would have been, shows his growth as a person. No Bruce Wayne before or after him has come close to showing how far removed from the common people he is, but also showing how human and relatable he is to people at the same time. He goes through life struggles in finding himself and overcoming the selfish and impetuous actions that we all may feel some point in our lives, while also overcoming more grief than most people will ever overcome at such a young age. He is arrogant and brash in the beginning, and by the end becomes a light in the darkness that we should all strive to be. Personally, Christian Bale is my favorite Batman. And yeah. Alfred Pennyworth. He is portrayed by Michael Caine and symbolizes the fatherly figure that Bruce needed throughout his childhood and throughout his eventual rise to becoming the Caped Crusader. He gives great common sense advice and is that shoulder to lean on when Bruce is developing the Batman as a symbol to shine through the filth of Gotham City. He is hard on Bruce and reminds him of the lineage that he has inherited, and that he should not so flippantly cast it aside. He should assume the mantle of the Wayne family and use his resources to help others, especially those in need. He alone has the power to help others more than anybody else, and Alfred reminds him of the fact all the time. He also has some great one-liners and keeps Bruce Wayne level while delving into such a dank and dark place as the Gotham underworld. Lines that are include it's not just your house, it's your father's house. That's all that's left of him. I give a damn because one man decided to give me and protect what is most precious to him. What is the point of all those push-ups if you can't lift a bloody log? Next we have Rachel Dawes, played by Katie Holmes, and she is the young and idealistic Gotham City District Attorney that is a longtime childhood friend of Bruce Wayne, although she does not know what he does after dark. She does what every good female lead should do, and that is gives Bruce advice, slaps him when he says he's going to kill Joe Chill, reminds him of the filth that is in the underground of Gotham City, and that it's still there, even though it has been swept under the rug. And she gives one of the most quotable moments of the movie. It's not what you are underneath, but what you do that defines you. It's a very powerful statement, and something that all people should take into account in their own daily lives. I think she does a decent job with the character. She's decent looking enough. Although I think Maggie Gyllenhaal does a much better job in The Dark Knight, acting-wise. Although, if you had to put them 2 and 2 together, Katie Holmes is the somewhat better looking of the two. But Maggie Gyllenhaal is the better actor. But we'll get into her performance in The Dark Knight when I review that. Next, we have Jonathan Crane, portrayed by Cillian Murphy, who does an amazing job with the character, showing how close he is to madness, while also, at some times, seeming somewhat normal. He's loving it in this role, really hamps it up at times, really gets into that creepy, subdued performance. Although he is simply a tool to be used by Ra's al Ghul, and is allowed to run amok, spreading fear at the end of the film. The Scarecrow character was pretty cool, all things considered. Not a perfect resemblance to the comics, but it's a pretty damn good job, and a good representation overall. Trying to control people through fear, showing that he is actually the one that is mad, and not others. He looks like Crane, and acts like Crane, spews psychological babble, and shows that he should probably be in Arkham Asylum, along with the patients that he supposedly treats. Next we have Officer Gordon, portrayed by Gary Oldman, and I think he has done the best job at portraying what Gordon is like in the comics. He is sharp and resourceful and loyal to almost a fault. He's the kind of officer you could have a beer with and not worry about him stabbing you in the back, even though he has many chances where he could become a rat. He literally tells the detective Flass that, "I'm no rat." He could easily profit from all the corruption going on, but he doesn't. He comforts Bruce when he is a young boy after the death of his parents, and does the simple task of putting his jacket over him to let him know he's not alone in the world. And I have to say that action alone should be commended. It should be expected of all officers to be comforting in that situation, and he does it wonderfully. It probably really helps young Bruce Wayne as he is navigating the world with Jess Alfred at his side and not his beloved parents. Next we have Lucius Fox, portrayed by the wonderful Morgan Freeman, who is full of one-liners and is also very intelligent and resourceful, quiet and unassuming. He's done dirty by Mr. Earl, who is played by the legendary Rutger Hauer and fired from Wayne Enterprises. He is later redeemed in the film as he gets Earl's job due to the fact that Bruce Wayne buys back all the shares as it is going public. In a quippy, witty line, he tells Mr. Earl what Mr. Earl told to him. "Didn't you get the memo?" He is responsible for all of Wayne's gadgets and develops the antidote for Crane's fear toxin. I think he's wonderful in the role. I think he's a really good Lucius Fox. And Morgan Freeman, as always, is usually pretty entertaining. Has a quippy, witty line here and there. And I fully support him as Lucius Fox. Carmine Falcone, played by the always excellent Tom Wilkinson. He is so hammy in this role as the seedy head of the Gotham underworld. He warns Wayne at the beginning of what may happen when you try to take on the crime in Gotham City. Crime will fight back and kill when necessary. Although that same fear is sent back onto him after he is strung up by the Batman, after all his henchmen are defeated by Batman when loading in a shipment of drugs. He is later exposed to Crane's fear toxin and subsequently thrown into Arkham Asylum. Now, Carmine Falcone, like in the comics, is just somewhat smart, conniving gangster. I don't think he's mad at all. I think he's just a bad person. He's a criminal. So when Crane exposes him to his fear toxin just to throw him in Arkham Asylum, it really comes off as just kind of lame. It's just because he's just not insane. He's just a bad person. Should go to Blackgate instead. He talks a lot about how powerful fear and intimidation are in the underworld. But as I stated before, the same fear is put on him as well in the form of Batman. In the name of fear, he reminds Bruce Wayne in the beginning, people always fear what they don't understand. And some other lines include, never underestimate the people of Gotham City. People get mugged coming home every day. Sometimes things just go bad. Ra's al Ghul, played by the always wonderful Liam Neeson, and he is the megalomaniacal head of the League of Shadows and is responsible for training Bruce Wayne, or at least takes him under his wing and tells Bruce that if you can find a blue flower and bring it to the mansion of the League of Shadows, that you may find what you are looking for. He doesn't promise anything, but he does promise that there may be a light for Bruce Wayne at a time when he is so lost. Liam Neeson is perfect for the role and is sympathetic at the beginning and hard when he needs to be, always constantly reminding him that crime is always present and that it must be outrooted. Eventually, we see how far he's willing to achieve his Malthusian ethic by destroying Gotham through fear. I must point out that Malthusian ethics should be destroyed. They're terrible. They are the basis of eugenics and many of the horrible other things that happened in the 20th century. Ra's al Ghul is basically a human version of Marvel's Thanos. He warned Bruce about how his compassion could come back to bite him, as Wayne could have allowed him to die and avoid all the issues that happened at the end of the film. But like I said before, Bruce was willing to save him because he's a good person and didn't want him to die. And he was unaware as to how far Ra's was willing to go at the time. It is unfortunate that we are unable to see his Lazarus pit, but it is understandable considering the real and gritty nature of the Dark Knight trilogy. He is done in when he doesn't mind his surroundings, as the train that he is on eventually plummets and explodes. He doesn't mind his surroundings, as he made clear to Bruce early on in the film. Now we have a spoiler section. I imagine most of the people that may watch this video have seen this movie, but just for the record, here's a spoiler section. The end of the movie is intense and hard to take your eyes away from. It is engrossing and keeps your attention the whole time. The microwave emitter that was stolen from Wayne Enterprises, or misplaced, as somebody says, is activated by Ra's and leads to Crane's toxin covering Gotham Island and infecting everybody with the poison and covering them in fear. People don't know what to do and begin to panic. There's one scene that always sticks with me, where it seems to show one man crushing the skull of another, probably because he sees something horrible and has to destroy it. It's really kind of thrilling at times, seeing how all of this fear toxin affects everybody. Rachel is infected. Well, she's not infected. Earlier in the film, she was exposed by Crane's toxin after she goes to question him about why Carmine Falcone is sent to Arkham City. So she already has her intense fear-induced moment, so she is immune to it. She protects a young boy who is not protected from it and sees all the horrifying instances going around him, Like, he sees Crane riding on a horse, with the horse spewing fire from its nose, in a really terrifying scene. Not terrifying to me, but it could be terrifying to some viewers. It's a really cool look. It's kind of dated now, but it looks pretty good. As she is protecting him and running away from him, Crane mutters the words. I can't remember what the line is exactly, but he is shot in the face with a taser. It is kind of hilarious because he's such a deranged nutball, and even when he gets shot with the taser, he's just laughing, probably in pain, but he just sounds completely deranged. Scene of Batman being dragged by the train as he tries to catch up to the train is exhilarating and really cool looking. It looks like a real practical effect, and I think it is. He eventually catches up, and then he and Ra's have their final battle of hand-to-hand fighting in some sword-on-sword combat or sword-on-greaves contact, along with some witty one-liners. Gordon gets to drive the Batmobile as a means to destroy some of the supports holding up the train so that it doesn't hit the lower narrows underneath the Gotham City, and it lead to it exposing everybody else in the city to the fear toxin. It's really fun watching him have such a fun time with it. As the train is collapsing, Batman gets the better of Ra's and has a chance to kill him. Has his elbow to his neck and could easily just do it, but as I've said before, Batman is unwilling to do it because he is better than that, and emits a witty line, "I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you." And he flies out the back of the train as Liam Neeson looks and closes his eyes, hoping he will survive, knowing that, even though it's not including, knowing that he may be able to make it to a Lazarus pit somewhere. This line is a perfect line to go out as he glides out of the back of the desiccated train before falling down and later exploding. The next day, we are treated to a wonderful moment where Mr. Earl is being replaced by Fox as Wayne purchased most of the public shares, as I said before. The film, after that, ends with a tease of Joker in the next film, showing a playing card. And also, before that, we have Rachel coming to Bruce in the charred remains of his mansion, saying and mentions that if he ever does not need Batman, that she'll be waiting for him. We'll see if that's put to the test in the next film, but they embrace and they walk off together, or Bruce walks off with Alfred. They talk about reinforcing the foundations of the mansions in the southeast wing. As I said before, the film ends with the tease of the Joker, and by Gordon showing him a playing card of the Joker, and we all know that it's going to be the Joker in the next film. And when I watched this movie for the first time, I had no idea. I mean, like we all did, we had no idea what kind of performance we would be in for the next film, but I'll get into that in my next review. In conclusion, in the end, the special effects still hold up, and we are treated to a perfect ending for the film, a well-deserved payoff that is completely earned, as Batman shows that he can be the symbol that Gotham needs. The writing can honestly be pretty goofy at times, but there are some great lines that give the story weight and gravitas. I'd say most of the characters give great performances. I know Batman's voice... This is something I like to point out. I know Batman's voice has been memed and talked about to death, but it's important to remember that all throughout the filming, Christopher Nolan had a chance to tell him to use something else, but he never once told him to stop using the voice, so It goes to show that the voice fits with the overall narrative and the gritty nature of the movie. It's a shame we didn't get to see the real Victor Zsasz from the comic, because the guy that we get seemed just like an everyday normal Batman goon. Victor Zsasz is just a deranged psychopathic killer. He is not a butcher for the mob. And the guy that we see, the bald guy we see in the first court scene, is just ridiculous. I mean, I did notice some scars on him, looking like he etched or did a tally of the people he's killed. But honestly, it's not Victor Zsasz. It's just bald-headed Carmine Falcone goon number 1. Score is epic and bombastic when it needs to be, and somber and heartfelt during the tragic moments of the film. It really gets you into the story. It keeps your attention throughout the film, and I highly recommend this movie if you have not already seen it, or just the whole Dark Knight trilogy in general. I recommend it in its entirety. In the end, on an enjoyability scale of this film, I give it a 10 out of 10. Overall, I think the movie would get a 9 out of 10 for me. It's nearly flawless as a imperfect movie can be. And I hope you all have a newfound perspective of Batman Begins and can understand why it's secretly my favorite of the whole Dark Knight trilogy. If you're just stopping through and just happened on this video, like, subscribe, comment, share. I hope you have a great day, and God bless.